Welcome to In Memoriam, the final spotlight.
Today feels heavier than usual, doesn't it?
It really does. Usually when we do these deep dives, we're looking back at a moment in time. But today, with the news out of Chicago, we're looking at a life that didn't just span eras. It almost dragged the country from one to the next.
That is the perfect way to put it. We're talking, of course, about the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., who passed away today, Tuesday, February 17th, 2026.
And when you look at the sheer timeline, it's hard to process. This is a man who started his career standing with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the Jim Crow South.
And he ended it in a wheelchair, battling a neurodegenerative disease, but still protesting during the George Floyd trials.
Right through the Black Lives Matter movement. He was the bridge.
He was. There's really no other way to describe him. He connected the civil rights tactics of the 50s and 60s with the systemic critiques of the 21st century.
But what's so singular about him, and I think what makes this so complex, is that he occupied a lane that, well, it didn't exist before him. And has it really existed since?
I don't think so.
You mean the fact that he was treated like a world leader despite being a private citizen?
Exactly.
Oh.
I mean, besides being a shadow senator, which we should get into, it's a very D.C. thing, he never held a national elected office.
No. Not a congressman, not a governor.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And yet he moved through the world like he was a head of state.
He was often called the president of Black America.
And he used that influence for incredibly high-stakes work, negotiating with dictators, freeing hostages, shaping the entire Democratic Party platform.
But that title, it's complicated because our mission today isn't just a eulogy. It's to understand the complexity of the man. He was a clergyman, yes, a politician.
A surprisingly effective diplomat.
And a massive agitator.
And you have to say it, a man with a massive ego. You can't tell the story of Jesse Jackson without the ego. It was his engine, but it's also his Achilles' heel. So today we have to look at the whole quilt, the triumphs and the self-inflicted wounds.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, because to understand a guy who literally willed himself into the history books, you have to see where he started. And it wasn't American royalty.
No, far from it. And this origin story is, I think, crucial to his whole psychology. He was born October 8th, 1941, in Greenville, South Carolina.
The deep, segregated South.
And the circumstances of his birth were the talk of the town, and not in a good way.
This was the story with his neighbors, right?
That's right. His mother, Helen Burns, was just an 18-year-old high school student.
Yeah.
His biological father was her 33-year-old married neighbor, Noah Robinson.
Wow. So in 1941, in a conservative Black community, that's a heavy label to put on a child.
Oh, it was a massive stigma.
Yeah.
He talked about it openly later, but you can feel the pain. He was taunted. The other kids would call him a nobody, a bastard child. They made sure he knew he didn't belong.
That has to do something to a kid's psyche. You either crumble under that, or you build a shell so hard that nothing can get through.
And Jackson built a fortress. That specific pain, that feeling of being a nobody, it became the fuel for his entire life.
So when he started that famous chant, "I am somebody,"
He wasn't just pumping up a crowd, he was talking to himself. He was answering those kids back in Greenville.
it was a personal affirmation first.
Precisely. A demand for recognition. And at first, he tried to get that recognition through sports. He was an incredible athlete.
Football, baseball, all of it. He got a football scholarship to the University of Illinois, which is a huge deal.
It is. That's Big Ten football. It's the path to the pros. But this is where he runs, smack into the wall of 1960s structural racism.
The quarterback issue.
The quarterback issue. Jackson was a QB, a leader. But in Illinois back then, the coaches, the culture, they believed that Black athletes didn't have the intellectual capacity to play quarterback.
That old trope. You can run, you can catch, but you can't lead.
That's the one. They told me he'd have to switch positions. And a lot of guys would have just done it to keep the scholarship. But Jackson, he quit.
He just walked away.
He transferred. He wasn't going to compromise on his own potential. So he went to North Carolina A&T, a historically Black university, and there he became the star quarterback and the student body president.
That seems to be the pattern with him. If the door is locked, he doesn't just knock. He goes and builds his own building down the street.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And being in North Carolina in the early 60s put him right at the heart of the sit-in movement. He was part of the Greenville Eight, who did a sit-in at the whites-only library.
And then by 65, he's in Selma, marching with Dr. King.
And that's his entry into the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But his relationship with Dr. King wasn't a simple father-son thing. There was friction.
A lot of it, from what I've read.
A lot of it. King saw his brilliance right away. In 1966, he puts Jackson in charge of Operation Breadbasket in Chicago. That was the economic arm of the movement.
What was the strategy there exactly?
It was about leverage, using black buying power to force white-owned companies to hire black workers. The slogan was, "Don't buy where you can't work." And Jackson was a natural. King said he'd done better than a good job. But Jackson was ambitious. He was flashy. He had the afro, the medallions, and the cameras just loved him. And King's inner circle, and sometimes King himself, they felt Jackson was more interested in building the Jesse Jackson brand than the SCLC movement.
Which brings us to the moment that really defined that tension. April 4th, 1968, the Lorraine Motel.
The assassination of Dr. King. This is a very sensitive part of the story, but we have to address it because the accounts differ so wildly.
Right. So the story Jackson told the media, the version he gave the Chicago City Council right after, was cinematic. He said he was the last person to speak to King. That King died in his arms.
He placed himself at the very center of the tragedy. And to make it even more visceral, he showed up at a memorial the next day wearing a turtleneck he claimed was stained with Dr. King's blood.
The optics of that are just staggering. He's literally wearing the blood of the martyr. It's a way of saying, I am the heir.
It is. But the problem was, the other people who were there, King's trusted aides, they told a different story.
People like Andrew Young.
Yes, Andrew Young, Alfred Duckett, the people on the balcony. They said when the shot was fired, Jesse Jackson was actually in the parking lot below. He wasn't on the balcony, and he didn't hold King. And the photos from right after, they don't show him near the body.
That is a huge discrepancy. It feels so calculated.
It rubbed the old guard the wrong way. They saw it as opportunism in the face of a national tragedy. But, and this is key to Jackson, the media ate it up. Whether it was perfectly accurate or not, that image positioned him as the successor in the public eye.
He seized the vacuum.
He did. And by 1971, he splits from the SCLC entirely and founds his own organization, Operation PUSH.
People United to Save Humanity. I always thought PUSH was such a great name. It's an action verb.
It is. And later he merges it with the National Rainbow Coalition to form Rainbow PUH.
Yeah.
And this is where he transitions from a civil rights organizer into a true political force.
And that's what paves the way for something that at the time must have seemed impossible, a black man running for president of the United States. And not just as a statement, but to actually win.
The Jackson phenomenon. We really can't overstate how disruptive this was. He ran in '84 and again in '88.
Let's talk '84 first, the Rainbow Coalition speech. Looking back, that was light years ahead of its time.
It really was. He talked about America as a quilt, not a blanket, many patches, many colors. And he was the first major candidate to explicitly invite gays and lesbians into that coalition.
Which was politically toxic for most people in 1984.
Revolutionary. He was uniting the rejects, as he called them, and he registered over 1 million new voters. But we can't talk about '84 without talking about the controversy.
The Hymietown comment.
Yes. In a conversation with a reporter, thinking he was off the record, he referred to Jews as Hymies and New York City as Hymietown.
And there's just no spinning that. It's an anti-Semitic slur.
It is. And the fallout was nuclear. This felt like a betrayal, especially to the Jewish community, who'd been such strong allies during the '60s.
So what did he do?
Eventually, he owned it. He went to a synagogue in New Hampshire and apologized. He said, "Charge it to my head and not my heart." But the damage was done. It really hurt him.
But he came back in 1988. And I think people forget how successful that second run was.
No, 1988 was the year of Jackson. He won 11 contests. But the real shocker was Michigan.
He won Michigan. That's a major industrial state.
Exactly. With a coalition of black voters and white union workers. For a brief moment, a terrifying moment for the establishment, Jesse Jackson was the front runner for the Democratic nomination.
The DNC must have panicked.
They did. But the legacy of that run, I mean, most people agree, you don't get Barack Obama in 2008 without Jesse Jackson in '88.
It's the proof of concept.
Jackson raised the lid, as he put it. He proved a black candidate could command that stage.
So he never becomes president, but he did hold one office, shadow senator, which sounds like a comic book villain, but it's a real thing.
Lassie. It does. But yeah, D.C. has no voting reps in Congress, so they elect shadow senators to lobby for statehood. He won that in 1990. It was symbolic, but he used it.
But his biggest role really was this sort of shadow State Department he was running. The man was flying into hostile countries and bringing Americans home.
This is one of the most fascinating parts of his career. He could go where the U.S. government couldn't or wouldn't, and negotiate hostage releases.
Give us the highlight reel.
It starts in '84. Syria. Navy Lieutenant Robert Goodman is shot down. The Reagan administration is stuck. Jackson flies to Damascus, meets with Assad, and boom, brings Goodman home.
The White House must have been furious.
Oh, seething. But they couldn't argue with the result. Then Cuba, same year, he gets 48 prisoners released from Castro. 1990, he goes to Iraq, gets Saddam Hussein to release hundreds of women and children being used as human shields,
And Kosovo in '99.
securing the freedom of 3 U.S. soldiers.
So why did it work? Why would Saddam or Castro listen to a preacher from Chicago?
Because he wasn't the government. That was his superpower. A dictator could say yes to Jackson and frame it as a humanitarian gesture. It gave him a face-saving way out.
Diplomacy by personality.
Exactly. Sure, it fit his ego, but he got the job done.
Now we have to pivot to the personal side. He presented this image of a perfect family, married to Jacqueline since 1962, 5 kids. Jesse Jr. becomes a congressman.
Civil rights royalty. But that image cracked wide open in 2001.
The affair.
It was revealed he'd fathered a daughter, Ashley, with a staffer, Corinne Stanford.
And he couldn't deny it.
No, he admitted it. It was tabloid fodder for months. But what's interesting is how he handled it. He supported the child, and he actually referenced his own childhood.
He brought it back to being born out of wedlock.
Exactly. He said, I understand what it means. In a strange way, it humanized him. It tarnished the Reverend title, but it made him, I think, more relatable.
And speaking of flaws, that hot mic moment in 2008, this is when Obama is running.
Yeah, you would think Jackson would be taking a victory lap. But he's on Fox News, doesn't know his mic is on, and he's complaining that Obama was talking down to black people.
And on the hot mic, he said
he wanted to cut his nuts off.
wow, talk about jealousy.
It looked that way. The old lion struggling with the young lion. It looked like he was afraid of becoming irrelevant.
But then you get the redemption, November 2008, election night, Grant Park in Chicago.
I remember that image so vividly. Obama walks out as president-elect, the cameras cut to the crowd, and there's Jesse Jackson.
And he's sobbing.
Just tears streaming down his face, uncontrollably. And I think in that moment, all the jealousy just evaporated. He felt the weight of history. He realized that victory was his, too. The scars he took let Obama walk through the door.
That is powerful. He also had a huge impact on the language we used.
He did. In the late 80s, he was the one pushing the shift from black to African American. He said black is a color, but African American has cultural integrity. It connects you to a heritage.
So bringing us to today, February 17th, 2026, Reverend Jackson passes away at 84.
At his home in Chicago, surrounded by family, it's the end of a long, long health battle.
We knew about the Parkinson's.
Well, he announced that in 2017, but it was later confirmed to be progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP. It's a rare, very aggressive neurodegenerative disorder.
But even with that, he never stopped.
He really didn't. He survived COVID, a serious head injury, and even when he couldn't speak clearly anymore, he was still showing up. He was at the George Floyd trial, at the Ahmaud Arbery trial, in a wheelchair, but he was there.
That resilience is just unmatched. He only stepped down from Rainbow PUSH in July of 2023.
Right, and the reactions today reflect that. Al Sharpton called him a movement unto himself and said he taught him that justice is not seasonal.
And his family called him a servant leader.
It's fitting. You know, he once said something in 2011 that sums it all up. He said, sometimes when you tear down walls, you're scarred by falling debris, but your mission is to open up holes so others behind you can run through.
He took the scars so others could run.
He did. He moved the movement from protest to politics.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing we should take away from the life of Reverend Jesse Jackson?
I think it's that you don't have to be perfect to be pivotal. He was complex, he had an ego, he made mistakes, but he never, ever gave up on the idea that America could be better.
And he left us with a phrase that will probably outlive us all.
Keep hope alive.
Exactly. Thank you for listening to this Memorial Deep Dive. It's a lot to process. A life this big deserves the attention. And here's a final thought to chew on. Jackson started as the ultimate outsider, demanding to be let in. By the end, he was the ultimate insider, advising presidents. It makes you wonder, who are the outsiders shouting at the gates today that will be the elder statesmen of tomorrow?
That is the question.
Take care, everyone. Keep hope alive.